All right, let me kick this off. And hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural Hyperlight community meeting. A couple things just to get out of the way. These meetings are recorded, and this project is currently governed by the Microsoft Open Source Code of Conduct. So there's a link to that at the top of the notes, similar to a lot of the other open source code of conducts. But I just wanted to remind everybody of that. If you aren't comfortable with being recorded, feel free to mute or and turn off your video. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of it. I think we'll kind of start with a quick round of introductions since this is the inaugural meeting. But first, if there's somebody who wants to volunteer to take notes and edit the agenda, I'd appreciate that. All right, looks like David raised his hand. Awesome. So, yeah, I'll kick that off. My name is Mark Rossetti. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft and working on the Hyperlight project, and I'm going to run the first community meeting. If anybody else wants to introduce themselves, just raise your hand and in the meeting, and we'll kind of just go through people in order and yeah, get through everybody and then start with the agenda. Ralph, go ahead.
I'm Ralph Scolacci. I'm a principal program manager at Microsoft. And I'm essentially management overhead for the engineers on the project.
Great. Simon, I see you're next. Okay.
Hi, Simon Davis at Microsoft, software engineer on Hyperlight. Been here for a while.
Awesome, thanks. David, I think you were next.
Hi, David Justice, principal engineer at Microsoft, working on the project and excited to see everybody.
Welcome, welcome. Lucy?
Hello, I'm Lucy, also an engineer at Microsoft, working a lot on Hyperlight and having some video problems today.
Yep. Awesome. Jorge?
Yep, hello. I'm also an engineer here at Microsoft, working partly on Hyperlight and also on other projects.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Doru?
Hello, so I'm Doru. I'm with Microsoft and working on Hyperlight, and I'm excited to be in this first community meeting. Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome again. And Simon, I think I was fighting with you for raising and lowering your hand. I don't know. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Or okay. Sorry. Okay, then Ludwig. I saw you raise your hand.
Hello, I'm Ludwig. I work on Hyperlight and I'm from Microsoft as well.
Yep. Oh, I should add I am also from Microsoft.
I don't think I raised my hand, but I'll go next. Dan, one of the core maintainers for the project as well, working at Microsoft, and yeah, excited to have or to be part of the first community meeting.
All right, that's everybody that I saw raise their hand. If there's anybody else, yeah, like Dan, just feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we can get started. Okay, first thing, announcements. So tomorrow, roughly 23 hours from now, 8 a.m. Pacific time, the Hyperlight project will be discussed at the CNCF Tag Runtime meeting. If anybody's interested in hopping, I believe, David, you're going to be presenting. Do you want to add any comments to that, or?
So what triggered this is Hyperlight's submission as a CNCF sandbox project. So the what is Tag Runtime seems to be the technical advisory group that is most closely aligned with this technology. So I expect it'll be a little bit of a chat about what Hyperlight is, why we're building it, and some of the use cases that we see, as well as questions about community involvement, intent, and then maybe some feedback and Q&A. So I expect it relatively light, and then I expect there will be some work to do afterwards. So Tag Runtime will probably give some advice, and we'll go from there. So really excited. Can't wait to get in front and talk about Hyperlight. So cool. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, let me know.
Awesome. I think okay, we can get started with some of the agenda items then. I think we already did some of the introductions. So the next discussion item was see somebody added release cadence to I think in the future I'll add a note too. We should put your either GitHub alias or alias you're using to join this in the meeting or the alias you use to join this meeting in the next to the discussion item so we know who to.
Hello, that was me who put that down. I was just curious if Hyperlight has a planned release cadence, because I've seen one release on GitHub and crates.io, but not sure if when the next one is coming.
I have a feeling we might talk about that as part of the next agenda item, which looks like it's going to be start discussing some of the project roadmap. Do we want to just kind of fold that into the next one, the next agenda item?
Sure.
Okay, yep, I think that looks good. Also, I think I skipped it, and we'll probably need to build up a little bit of muscle, but we do have, I think we do want to get into the habit of assigning kind of issue wranglers, getting a rotation of that going, to kind of just keep track of new issues that come in. Do we want to start doing that now, or kind of wait until we have a couple of community meetings underway to see what the load is and everything? Like right now, we probably don't have that many issues, so we can kind of just have best effort. Hopefully, everybody take a look at that. I have seen that be helpful in other community meetings and open source projects. All right, I guess let's go into a little bit of the project roadmap and share some of that for especially for folks who are new here. David, do you want me to stop sharing and you share, or do you want me to share anything?
Point of just real quick, are we going to? I didn't get a direct answer about release cadence. Do we intend on? It seemed like we intended on talking about that in the project roadmap milestone review. Is that the intent?
I think so, unless anybody
Okay,
has any thoughts on or updates on release cadence. I think Ludwig's right. There's the one release, and I don't know if there's a um kind of plans or criteria for when and how we plan on cutting future releases. I think if anybody wants to talk about this now, we can. Otherwise, maybe
awesome.
go
I
another
just want
road.
to make sure we had notes properly set up. Let me open up the project and I'll share gladly.
Let me stop sharing this. I think it's set up so anybody can share, but let me know if you're having issues.
Sure. Thank you. And then let me see here. Looks good. Looks good so far. Okay. How are we looking?
I can see it.
Fantastic. Okay. Is it large enough for everybody, or should I make it larger?
It's okay for me.
Okay. So here we go. So we have 6 items right now. There are actually there's probably many more, and we have many more issues related to this as well. So let's start off with the big boulders. And how about we go through? Would we like to go through each one individually, or
I think first
what?
let's share how people can get access to this. It looks like is this in a public project, GitHub project in the
It
Hyperlight?
is indeed.
Okay.
Let me drop into the chat. I think the project board is also listed in the meeting notes. So if you're interested, there's a
All right.
link already there. There's also one posted into the meeting chat. However, for folks that are watching after the fact, that will not be available. So please go to the meeting notes.
Excellent.
And while I'm presenting, if somebody would kindly take notes in my place, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Um, okay, so on the board right now, we have a QuickJS Hyperlight guest example, WASM time Hyperlight guest. Hyperlight debugging with KVM, MSHV, and then crash dump loading. And then finally, Hyperlight POSIX guest. Now, those are just titles. Do we want to talk a little bit about each one? Just give a quick just. Okay.
Well, I see
Ralph,
Ralph raised
yes.
his hand too. And
Got to find the mute button that's on the other side of the table. So I I think the guest examples make sense, right? Those are going to be guests that you can run in Hyperlight. And we'd like to certainly, if people are here to find out about those things, then they should raise their hand and ask. But otherwise, I'd like to dig into probably talk a little bit more about the ones that have things, in there, like the debugging one, and just kind of describe what debugging means in that case in terms of the issue, as well as the POSIX guest. That would make sense to me.
I see, Simon, you've got your hand raised.
I just thought for the first two, we might want to distinguish between one of them being an example and one of them not. What we mean by that.
True.
Good. Awesome. Okay, I will quickly. For the QuickJS Hyperlight guest, if you noticed when we put out Hyperlight, Hyperlight did not have a lot of examples of how to make a non-trivial guest. So Hyperlight as a project basically sets up some memory and a CPU, loads that memory up, and then starts executing that application within there. It's consisting of a guest and a host, and can be um, run on top of hypervisor of your choice, so KVM or Hyper-V right now. So we want to give an example of how you can build a guest that is more than just like some raw C. How do you execute JavaScript within Hyperlight, or one way of executing JavaScript within Hyperlight? And that's what we intended for with the QuickJS cast. And Ludwig has been working on that. And as an example, meaning we don't really intend on using this in production, perhaps. Maybe if somebody decided that they wanted to, we could then prioritize that, or others could prioritize it in the community and really add to the robustness of it. But we intend on just having it out there as an example so that people can see how to build that. So you contrast that with the WASM time Hyperlight guest. We intend on providing a robust guest for running WebAssembly components using WASM time in Hyperlight. This is intended for production usage in the end, but yes, it is work in progress right now. Any questions on that?
Not related to that one, but we do have a question in chat. Not sure if we're going to get to it now or.
Yeah, why not? Abhinesh, thank you so much for the question. If we have time for Q&A, I use Windows containers at work. Are there any interesting use cases around Hyper-V, HNS, and/or Win containers? That's a really great question. Anybody want to field that one?
So I think we're definitely plan on supporting Hyperlight running on Windows hosts, and we do have like support and CI running for the Windows, the WHP, the Windows Hypervisor partitioning APIs. I don't think that, and I think we've had a question like this in the in our Slack group as well. I don't think we're currently planning on providing a way to run either containers or manage full-blown virtual machines at this point for the project. This is more of the project is mainly geared towards running some kind of very scoped guests that do specific workloads and run kind of a particular yeah, run a particular guest in there. We're curious if you're interested in, or we're curious what kind of the interest in running containers in kind of a Hyperlight partition is, especially given that Windows does support Hyper-V isolated containers. But yeah, we're definitely open up for discussions, but I don't think that's on the roadmap now. Ralph or Simon, do you want to take that?
Go ahead, Simon.
I wanted to ask you a clarifying question, Mark, in that we have a dev container for Linux where we can actually run Hyperlight within a container. Is that viable on Windows? I don't know that it is. The way that it works on Linux is that we expose the device for the hypervisor into the container, which is why it can work. I don't know if we can do something similar on Windows, but I guess that might be interesting if we could.
So on Windows, there is something called a host process container, which does kind of functionally act similar to what at least the Kubernetes community calls privileged containers on Linux. And privileged containers in Kubernetes does have kind of a specific meaning where specific devices are projected into the into those containers. Those containers have access to the host file system. Those containers can do inter-process communication between processes running on the Linux host, etc. I think that there's been an effort to kind of better like define what a privileged container is in Linux, especially given that a lot of people have switched to running other like non-Docker container runtimes, and that privileged concept did come from just the dash dash privileged flag for Linux containers. Um, so short answer is on Windows, running it in a standard Windows like container is not really viable. We don't have there's not really the option of doing a lot of that. You especially sharing devices and access to the like Windows kernel APIs through the Windows container kind of infrastructure. But there is a way of running it with Windows host process container, which is essentially a way of running like packaging up your workload in a container artifact and then executing it in such a way that it does run on the host, but and is managed with container runtimes. So yes and no, that's something that we could maybe investigate doing. But yeah, I think we need to look a little bit more about kind of use cases and exactly what those Windows host process containers support in order to do that. Lucy, did you have anything to add? I see
Oh,
your
just
hand.
a follow-up question or comment on that was that I think in traditional Windows containers, not the host process one, right? I know there's hypervisor isolated containers available, so I don't know if those will have L1VH available to them, but I think from the Hyper-V side, it would be easy to provide that. And then, you might be able to actually manage it with L1VH partitions. And I don't know if that's actually possible the way it's set up right now.
Yeah, I'm not. I need to check. I'm not entirely sure. I don't believe that Hyper-V isolated containers have access to the like the layer one virtualization. I think that what
Okay.
happens is a new virtual machine is created on the host, and this
Mm-hmm.
container are started up in there. But I don't currently know what access those containers running in there have. So we'll need to also follow up on that.
Yeah, well, if L1VH is enabled in the partition, it should let the guest kernel sort of create sub VMs under it, accounted as if they're under it. So we should check.
Yep.
Anyway.
It's a good question. Avinash, definitely we're interested in hearing more about this and supporting this. So, yep.
I'll jump in real quick just to say, hey, Avinash, if you were able to sketch out like a description of a use case, that would really be helpful. You could just drop it into the issues in the repo, and then people can talk about it there asynchronously and get all the details that you're personally interested in, so that we can figure out exactly how we're thinking about it. The POSIX stuff, for example, is going to discuss some of the stuff that needs to happen underneath the guest in order to figure out, things like files and networking and stuff like that, which most container environments presuppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Okay. Next up, right, so WASM time within Hyperlight is for running WebAssembly components and being able to run those in a secure virtual machine sandbox. So we're really excited about that. Lucy has been working on that. Lucy, do you want to say a few words about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this should be coming fairly soon. We well, so it'll be the interface will probably be based heavily on the WebAssembly component model and the WIT type interfaces. Although I want the interfaces we have might be slightly more general than you have in WIT right now. But yeah, basically, in component model semantics, you already have these shared nothing invariants, so it should be you should get sort of a very normal component to host API, a lot like what you would get out of WASM time host gen right now, but run the component isolated, which if your use case is capable of accepting the latency hit to calls, does give you a bit more security.
Thank you, Lucy. Very excited to see that. I know a lot of folks are excited too. Let's see. Next, we have a set of operational tasks, big boulders that we'd like to be able to accomplish, and this can provide native debugging for Hyperlight. So it's really tough to debug guests and debug virtual machine memory and all this stuff. So we would like to make it much easier. And so Dora has been working on this stuff. And Dora, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, allowing users to actually debug the guests hasn't been possible so far. Now we're working on adding GDB support. The first step is allowing KVM guests to be debuggable by GDB, and next we'll get to MSHV and the others. Yeah.
Awesome. And what's that thing about crash dump loading? Like, what is that about?
Yeah, so this is a feature that we're interested in adding in case a guest crashes and the debugging wasn't activated. The Hyperlight sandbox would actually spit out a crash dump that the user could later load and check the previous state and what happened actually. So that is a really nice task, nice feature to add for the users. Yeah.
That sounds quite useful. Yeah, definitely. When stuff blows up, we got to be able to figure out what the heck happened. Thank you so much. Awesome. And then Dan, you've been working on some cool stuff around POSIX and thinking about more standardized workloads. Like you think about containers, and we think about things that can use sockets and file systems and stuff. So tell me about your world.
Yeah, sure. So just for some context right now, if maybe folks in the chat or the audience don't know, Hyperlight, it's in its bare bones form, doesn't have access to much. So a guest that runs, say, be it WASM or just a native binary, doesn't have access to any syscalls. So when you run it, the only thing that it does have access to is whatever the host gives it access. By default, for example, the host gives access to a print function. So you can do, your default normal print lines. But you could also give it, your own APIs, and then the guest has a little bit more functionality. But we think that something that more workloads will require is just full POSIX support or some sort of POSIX support for, we mentioned the container workloads, and a whole and new world sort of opens up. So that's the work that I'm doing. A little bit of a research area, how that work gets done, and that's kind of what I'm working on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it. We haven't gotten all of the work up here, all the big items. However, it's a good start. And as we transition, we are also going to be adding, a prioritized backlog list as well. So let's hop over to the Hyperlight repo, and here we can see the issues that we have out there. But actually, let's jump into milestones. So,
David, just a heads up, you're not sharing your screen. If you,
Oh, I can see the screen.
oh, you can?
Oh.
Oh,
At least in Zoom, for me on the top, there's a way to see the meeting and David Justice's screen. But
is that I'm just bad at Zoom? Thanks, David. Sorry about that.
I will do a quick time check too before you continue, David. Just letting everybody know it is 9:30 and we do have. I'm fine staying over, but we do have about 8.5 minutes before the meeting will be forced closed for us.
Okay, so let's prioritize what we want to do. I was going to show milestone. We are past two. We need to close up the BTO milestone. Anybody want to speak to that milestone?
I guess maybe I'll just quickly say, I think one of the reasons why we're sort of past due is because one of the questions we had earlier on, right, about releases, is that we haven't quite decided what our release schedule is going to be. I think once we do, be it, maybe train releases with the monthly releases, will be a little easier to keep those milestones in check and just make more constant releases. So then, if a feature doesn't go into O2, we're not scared that when will it come up next? It'll just be the next release because we have that schedule set up.
Also, I think that
Excellent.
a few people working got ill, and so cut out a few weeks here and there, and that happens. So there's a contributor there.
Indeed. I do like the idea of having time-bounded releases, though. You just cut them on a monthly basis or something like that. If something doesn't get in, as you say, just roll it over. So I'm not sure exactly what cadence. Does anybody have a feeling for cadence? Is a month? Is that good? Does that make sense?
I have a feeling that until we have more of the we can establish a cadence now, but after we have more of those guests out and available to the public and people iterating on those as well, we might want to reevaluate cadence and especially if we want to tie the cadence of guest releases to Hyperlight releases and such.
Okay, indeed. How about we shoot for a month now and reevaluate as we go?
Ralph, hand raised.
One question is, there's always the balance. I think a month cadence as a target is a great one. But there's always the question of, we're right in the middle of the month, and this is a critical thing that we just finished, and we're excited, and we want people to use it. How are we going to handle out of band as opposed to band?
Ad hoc. Somebody raises a stink, or Ralph, you're going to a conference, let us know.
Do I get yelling permission? Hey, we need one.
You already do. So yeah.
Okay, I got yelling.
Okay,
too. Let's establish it. Everybody gets yelling permission, but let's establish that two other people need to actually say, okay, that yell's worth it.
Sure. That sounds reasonable.
You can't trust your PM to get yelling permission. That's too much.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so we have established we are aspirationally going for 1 month cadence. We will do our best to reach that, and we'll keep reevaluating our success at that. We have about 5 minutes left, as Mark had warned us about. How do we want to finish this? Mark, do we want to do like Q&A? Is there Any space that people want? What do you want to do?
I think probably leaving it like Q&A for this meeting would probably be a good use of time, especially since this is kind of the first meeting. So, yeah, let's open it up for some questions and answers. Because if nobody has questions and answers, I'll throw one out. I think folks who aren't kind of at like weren't part of this project before open sourcing, I'm curious kind of what your like motivations for joining this community meeting are. Is it more information? Like yeah, and everything like that. So
I'll talk since Ralph called me out.
okay.
I've worked with a few of the folks in this room before in the past, and I like looking at cutting edge things and finding out about how they work. I wouldn't say that I'm a WASM expert by any means, but I've been dabbling recently. So every time David posts about Hyperlight or WASM things that he's working on, if I have the time, I have a meeting in one more minute, but if I have the time, I love to join and see what you all are doing and all the cool stuff that's happening. So that's my motivation for joining. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. Whoa.
I think it's a Mac OS thing.
Oh, dang it. Oh,
That's a Mac
you
thing.
have a special like filter thing.
That's
Yeah,
a Mac thing.
I'm on my Windows machine right now. The Mac is back there acting as a jump box. Yeah, so I just wanted to show up and see what was going on and hear about the cool stuff. I haven't physically tried out Hyperlight yet, but I've been looking through some of the docs just now during the meetings, and I'll try it out later today. So appreciate you all letting me join and say hi. Hopefully I can join the next one. But we'll see depending on how busy the meetings are that day.
Awesome. Yeah. The question in the chat is if anybody's planning on being at Rejects or KubeCon. A lot of people raising their hand. I think yeah, that might be we should try and set something up, especially for people who are going to be traveling there. I think usually coming from CNCF, like those in-person meetings are always a great place to kind of just get to know people and really have a lot of kind of high bandwidth conversations. So, David?
Benson, can you tell us a little bit about Rejects? What is that? I have no idea.
So Rejects is this B-side conference that I organized right before KubeCon. It's supposed to be a pre-conference for the lot of us in Microsoft, but it's an amazing way to get the community together for 2 days of conference fun before the big show begins, before KubeCon kicks off. So yeah, we're usually quite excited to organize it because it's a bunch of rejected talks from KubeCon, and yeah, I make sure that there's a very cool program committee working in the background to kind of choose some of those talks so we can have kind of a broad spectrum of content and topics from the industry. And yeah, folks can just kind of come in there, hang out for a bit, attend the talks that they want to, and yeah, discuss or meet with some folks that they possibly wouldn't even be able to meet with at KubeCon because everyone gets busy there. So, yep.
I particularly like the lightning talks, and occasionally you get a nice, like, a fun ad hoc rapper up there,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
it is
that's true.
absolutely fantastic, entertaining, and it's really great to see the kind of tech folk interaction where it's a little bit chiller than say like the high stress atmosphere of Kubernetes students or KubeCon speaking or CTF native con.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would
Awesome.
be awesome if some of us can actually make it to Rejects. Then, I mean, some folks can actually have chats about Hyperlight there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, would love to. We are nearing in at the end of our time. Mark, would you like to address us in the end?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you have information or links to rejects, definitely add a link to the agenda and do that. But yeah, as David pointed out, we're rapidly approaching our cutoff time, so I will kind of just close it out. Yeah, thanks everybody for attending the inaugural community meeting of Hyperlight. I think we had some good discussions, and yeah, if anybody has anything else they want to add real quick, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording.